Hi guys, and what's up? It's Charla from That Girl Cooks Healthy. So today I'm going to show you how to make some green seasoning. Yes, that's right, some green seasoning. This is a really simple recipe, but one that is essential for so many Caribbean recipes. So I cannot wait to show you how to make it. So let's get to it and let's make it together. So these are the ingredients that you're going to need. You're going to need some shadow beni. Some islands know it as spirit weed. It's the same thing. If you cannot get shadow beni, then cilantro or coriander. If you're in the UK, you can use that instead. I try to use shadow beni, but it's not always easy to get it where I am. Thankfully for this recipe, for the video, I was able to get shadow beni, but I do use cilantro or coriander most of the time. But the shadow beni it's a game changer, and I do recommend, if you can get hold of it, to use that instead of the cilantro. You also need some parsley, some scallion, also known as chives. If you're from Trinidad and Tobago, you'll know it as chives. Some thyme, onion, celery, some garlic. You also need I'm using red bell pepper, and I'm using some sweet red peppers, sorry, because you would use pimento peppers, but again, that's something that I sometimes struggle with as well, to get that. So I just tend to use red bell peppers instead. You also will need some olive oil as well, and some pink salt. I don't have them here because I forgot to add them to the ingredients display, but you do need that as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is to remove the garlic cloves and the peppers and just put them in a colander. Just put them to a side while I cut the other ingredients. So the next thing I need to do now is just to chop the rest of the ingredients. So I'm going to start with chopping the onion first of all. So when you chop the vegetables, you don't really need to be precise about it. You can just pretty much just chop them quite rough. In terms of the size of how you chop them, that's going to depend on how powerful your blender or your food processor is. I'm using a Ninja, so my blender is quite powerful, so I'm able to just roughly chop them. But if you're using something that's not that powerful, then you want to chop them into small pieces. When it comes to the shadow beni, the chives and the parsley, you want to chop off the stem, because we're not using the stem. So you'll see me chopping off the stem of these ingredients, because we don't need that. So you make sure you chop most of it off. Mine has a blue band around it, and that makes it easier in terms of where to chop them off. But if you don't have that, you just want to just go for the long stem, or the bits where you have the bulky bulb, like you have with the chives. You can just chop that off. Like I said, you could just chop them rough, or you can chop them quite small. It really doesn't matter, but it does depend on what your food processor or your blender can handle. So once we chop that up, then we're going to rinse off the ingredients using a colander. That's a very important step, because you don't want to make this into a marinade and the ingredients are dirty and have debris on them. It's very important to wash them off. You can wash them whole, but I do both. Sometimes I'll do it whole, and then other times I will chop them up. But I wanted to just show you guys how you can do it, chopping it up if you want to. So this is the vegetables all chopped up, and the next thing we need to do is just rinse them off using the colander. So now you're just going to take that colander and put it in the kitchen sink and just run some cold water over the ingredients. And what you want to do now is just use your hand as well, or hands, and you really want to make sure that all of the ingredients are completely, or should I say the vegetables are completely rinsed through. So what I like to do is just to pick them up and just move them around, just to make sure that everywhere, obviously things like your garlic doesn't really need to be washed, so I just add it in the colander so everything is in one place. But you do want to make sure the shadow beni and the parsley and the chives, these also known as scallion, is washed, that there's no debris that you're going to bring when it comes to putting it in the blender or the food processor when we need to puree to make our green seasoning. So the next thing you want to do is add all of your ingredients to either a food processor or a blender. I'm using my blender here because my blender is really powerful, and I'm able to break it down a lot smoother and a lot quicker than using my food processor. You may need to do this in batches depending on the capacity of either of those equipments that you have. I can add all of mine to my blender and it will break down in ease. I also use a tamper that I have with my Ninja blender, and that helps as well to break down the green seasoning. So it does depend on what you're using. As you can see, I'm adding everything to mine. If you do it in batches, you can just add half of each of the ingredients and then add the rest of it, and you can do it that way if you want. So we're going to do that now, and then I'm going to show you how I break it down. You also want to add your olive oil and your pink salt now. In terms of the olive oil, you just want to add just enough to coat the bottom of the blender. So you don't really want to go overboard, and I just do that because that helps with breaking down the green seasoning. That's something that I didn't do before, but I've started to do that now. So just add a small amount before you begin to break it down. So now I'm going to put the lid on the blender, and once I do that and I begin to break down the green seasoning, you're going to see that I'm going to remove the top of the lid, and I'm going to put my tamper, and I'm just going to move it around from side to side and up and down. So you need to do that. If you do have this type of blender, this will definitely help, because this is going to help to break it down, so it's not going to take as long and it's going to be really quick. And it's a really useful tool that I recommend using if you're breaking down something that's quite chunky or it's quite large. Then this is going to help to break that down. So you're going to see me do that and then leave it just to puree a bit more. I like a puree texture for my green seasoning, but if you want yours chunkier, then you want to stop it quicker than, you know, just keep an eye on it, and then you'll see how you want it, and then you just stop the machine as soon as you see it in terms of the desired texture. I like mine smooth, some people like theirs chunky. So this is what our green seasoning looks like. Mine is silky smooth, and that's pretty much it really. That's how you make your green seasoning. So that's it, guys. That's how you make green seasoning. It's a really simple recipe, but one that is so useful and so powerful for so many Caribbean recipes. I hope you make this recipe and you find it as easy as I have found it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on the other side.